Hello everyone. Happy Mondays. We normally start we normally I can't even speak. We normally do Ask the Drummer on a Sunday, but this week it's going to be different because I was a bit busy yesterday. I went to a record fair in Leeds, and I thought I was going to go to a gig last night, but I was so tired I didn't go. But anyways, it's a brand new week, and it's just about 3 minutes to two in the afternoon here in the UK, which means it's 3 minutes till 10 p.m. in Manila. We're starting early because our guest is here now. I might as well do that, you know. So this week's guest, he's actually a very, very busy man. And I've just seen his post on Facebook that he's done so many shows and he's traveled the whole world to do gigs and everything. But they're off at the moment, so they've got a few days off before they go on another tour. And I'm so glad that he's here today. So, my dear friends, please welcome Stephen Irlam.
Hey,
Yay! Hello,
hey,
Stephen. How are you?
hi. How are you doing? You okay? You
Yeah, I'm
good?
fine, thanks. That's amazing that you're blue skies and everything. Are you in Manchester?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I'm in Manchester. It's sunny, so I've got a few days off at home, and while I've only got 6 days at home, I've
Yeah.
got to make the most of the sunshine while it's like this,
Oh,
because
oh
I'm going to be back to gloomy venues on the, you know,
yeah.
you don't get very much sunlight when you're touring sometimes, so you've
No,
got to make the most of it.
yeah, it's fantastic. It's like with the blue and the orange shirt that you're wearing there. It's perfect
Yeah, it
combination.
kind of
It
pops
looks
against
so
the
nice.
blue sky, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Jill, like I said, you've been busy. I've seen
Really
that
busy.
post. It's really, really busy. It's like 6 countries, seven
Yeah,
weeks, 38
yeah,
shows.
yeah. So we
God,
started off in Sweden. No, started off in Denmark, right at the back end of when was that? In back end of January. So we did
right?
Denmark, then Sweden, then Holland, Belgium, Luxembourg, then uh, France, and yeah, just got back day before yesterday.
Yeah,
So home for a few days and then onto a UK tour. So that's with the Bootleg Beatles.
yeah.
And I'm not the drummer, weirdly.
Of the
I'm
bootleg Beatles, no.
I'm the keyboard player for them, which is really strange for me. Yeah, because I've always considered myself a drummer, and I started out really as a drummer, and then
Yeah, yeah.
my I kind of became a bit of a multi instrumentalist and ended up kind of playing keyboards
Playing
for
keyboard.
most of my most of my touring life at the minute, which is really odd for me. So that's
Yeah.
only been happening for the past year. The rest of the time, I've been a drummer.
Oh, right, well, yeah, because it hasn't been that long since I saw you in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Rainband in Manchester. So you never
absolutely. Yeah,
stopped. You never stopped the whole like playing, and
never
you never
stopped.
stopped
No,
touring. Yeah,
no. And any opportunity I get to be behind a drum kit these days
yeah,
is a real bonus. So I take every opportunity I can get because I miss it sometimes.
yeah,
Particularly when
yeah.
I'm on the road so long playing behind a keyboard. It's I get itchy fingers and I need drumsticks in my hand, and you can't play keyboards with drumsticks.
No. Well, I'm so glad that at least you've got a few days off and that you're able to do Ask the Drummer. So thank you so much, Steve.
No
Stephen.
problem.
Or is it Steve? Steve. Yeah.
Steve's
Um.
good.
Yeah.
Steve's, yeah, take your pick.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to Ask the Drummer. Episode 165 is all about you, Stephen Irlam. So you're in Manchester. Are you born and bred in
Hmm.
Manchester? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so I was born in uh, Trafford General Hospital in 1986. Uh, and yeah, I lived all of my life. I grew up in Urmston. Urmston's the area of Manchester that I grew up in. I was born in the same hospital as Stephen Patrick Morrissey, who you might know as Morrissey.
oh wow.
So I was born in the same place as him,
Same place
which,
as him.
so good Manchester musical roots.
Yeah, because even your name, Earlham, that's a Manchester place. isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. And my granddad actually traced our family tree right back to the 1700s, and the male bloodline of our family, they were all from Urmston, right back as far as records could show. Our our oldest known uh, ancestor on the male
Yeah.
bloodline that you follow back, he's buried in the church by the church inn and on Flixton in Flixton. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Um, I forget what that
Yeah.
church is called now, but yeah, yeah. So
Well,
I'm
born in
thoroughly
1986.
Urmston.
Yeah. Well, you were born in 1986. That's like the Manchester for us who are not
Yeah,
from down here. I mean, Manchester in the 80s. I mean, that's the reason why I wanted to come here. I wanted to live in
yeah,
Manchester
yeah,
is
yeah,
because bands like the Smiths and the New Order, and of course the Stone
yeah,
Roses. They were like, even though they're like the latter part of the 80s and into the 90s.
mhm,
But what was it like? Of course, you're too young. You were born in '86. You're too young to be enjoying the
yeah,
Smiths and New Order. So what
yeah.
was it like
No,
living there?
I think for me, really, the first band that that really hit me when I was young, when I was like 9 years old in school, that was
Yeah,
Oasis. Oasis were the big thing, and that was one of those things. Whenever I went on holiday and I would say, "Oh, I'm from Manchester," and all the kids would be like, "Oh, that's a really cool place,"
yeah,
"Oh, that's where Oasis are from," and it's one of those things. But yeah, I think they were the first band that really hit me when I was a kid. Learning to play guitar and drums and things when I was a
yeah,
kid. That was a band where I idolized them. I thought, I could do that. You know, I want to
yeah,
do that. No.
yeah, yeah. I believe Tony McCarroll is doing an interview or sort of like a gig with John Robb in
Yeah,
next
yeah.
year. Are you gonna go to that one, or are you be on tour by that
I think
time?
I'll be on tour when,
You'll be
when
on.
that's happening. If I'm not, I'll be there.
Yeah, you're pretty much aware of Manchester being. I mean, I always say this is the music capital of the world.
Yeah,
I know there's Liverpool and Glasgow and all
yeah.
those
I would
places.
say Liverpool and Manchester.
And Manchester,
There's
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of a sibling rivalry. It's
yeah,
I've always thought of the relationship between Manchester and Liverpool as being a bit like that. Manchester have their bands and Liverpool have their bands, and
yeah,
they can both, you know, talk, you know, talk down each other. But if
yeah,
anybody from outside Manchester or Liverpool tries to talk down either of those cities, you go, no, hang on a
no,
second. Liverpool's got some great bands, or Liverpool will stick up for Manchester as well. It's a bit like we can take the mick out of each other, but other people can't take the mick out of Manchester and Liverpool.
yeah. That's true. But are you from a musical family at all?
So my granddad, um, yeah, my granddad on my dad's side, he was very much into. Um, he used to play organ, like
Oh,
electronic organ. That was kind of his thing. But he was always self-taught. He had. Uh, he also used to play banjolele as well, but
oh,
um, like
Angela.
he,
Is it a
yeah, like a
combination of
ukulele
banjo and
banjo. So
ukulele?
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's tuned like a ukulele,
Ukulele.
but
Okay.
it's on a banjo sort of drum skin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, he was the guy. He was the person that I think most influenced my learning when I was a kid. You know,
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
he sort of gave me the bug for it because, like, when my mum and dad were working and I was, you know, off on school holidays or whatever, then I would go and stay round at my granddad's.
Oh.
And they would look after me during the day while my mum and dad were working, and I was off on school holidays, and I would spend most of my time just sat playing the electronic organ, just working out what notes sounded nice against each other and trying to pretend to write songs and stuff from about the age of 5 or thereabouts. and
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
a way of passing the time. And I don't know, I kind of got the bug for it. And my granddad bought me. I remember from about the age of, I don't know, 7 or 8, really
yeah.
wanting to be a drummer. And I don't know where that came from, but that that was the instrument that I really wanted to learn.
Oh,
And
okay.
and I
Not the
don't know,
keyboard.
I don't
It,
know where the idea came from. I don't know whether it was my um my granddad or my mom or whatever. But the general consensus seemed to be, well, let's get him a guitar. So my
oh,
granddad bought me a guitar.
yeah,
So that was my first instrument.
yeah.
Um, and then I think after a couple of years of me pestering for a drum kit, I think they realised that I wasn't going to give up on this idea of being a drummer. So my first instrument was guitar, but I think my granddad sort of said, "Well, you've got to learn how to read music. So here's a good way of learning to read music, and then you can become a drummer." Um, so I learned how to play guitar to kind of learn how to be a drummer, and I don't still never quite understood the logic, but I think it was more the fact that my mum and dad didn't really want me playing a drum kit in the house
Oh, is it?
because drum kits are noisy and guitars are nice and quiet
Of
and
course, yeah.
portable and cheap.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, yeah.
thankfully that desire to be a drummer never left. And eventually, when I was 9 years old, I got a drum kit for
You got it.
Christmas. My mum and
Oh, sweet.
yeah, my mum and
Yeah.
dad put some money together. They realised that the dream wasn't going to disappear.
Okay.
And so they bought a second-hand drum kit, and
Yeah,
my
yeah.
very first kit was a red Kestrel kit, and I think I've only ever seen one of those since.
Oh,
But
and
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so when I
So
was
what
nine
about the
years old,
yeah, and what about the neighbors? Were they okay with you playing the drums with them?
yeah, I've never really had any issues with my neighbours. We were quite lucky, really, because um, we live in a detached house. It's not a particularly big detached house. But
Okay,
it's an because it's got space between our property,
and the other,
my mum and
yeah,
dad's
yeah,
house,
yeah.
because it had space between, there's air between the walls of next door. It didn't really matter too much, and I could play quite loud, and I was always quite careful of what time I was playing drums and stuff like that. And we got very, very few complaints over the years, so I was quite
Oh,
lucky with that, really.
well, that's
Yeah.
good then. Well, Aiden's our tech support. He says it's a great sound and picture. And he says he liked it. I think he likes the background of with the blue sky.
Yeah, yeah, and
Because
it's
we
real.
don't normally get to like
It's real. It's
outdoors,
not just a it's
Yeah,
not just a filter.
yeah. So, when you got this drum kit for Christmas, did you have any proper drumming lessons, or were you
Um,
self-taught, or is it just from
I
the guitar playing that you learned how to play
no,
guitar?
I remember that it was Christmas 1995, I think it was, and um, we had a CD player in the living room, and I think I got um, as a little stocking filler or a present from somebody. I had Michael Jackson's Earth Song had come out that year,
Oh
and I
God,
remember playing that on the CD player and
yeah,
listening because actually it was a big hit at the time, but more than anything, the drumming was quite slow and quite steady and quite simple. And it
okay,
gave me something to be able to kind of listen to by ear because that's all I'd ever done with any other instrument, really. Um, I had, uh, I taught myself on keyboards,
yeah,
and then I would teach myself little bits and pieces on guitar. But I did have guitar lessons. My granddad paid for my guitar lessons at school,
oh, okay,
um,
yeah, yeah,
uh, and but yeah, most of what I'd found a way of learning to listen to what was happening and regurgitate it. And I don't know whether that kind of came from my granddad, because that's how he used to play
Yeah.
organ. He never had a
Play by
lesson in his
ear.
life. He just
Yeah,
would
yeah,
listen
yeah,
and play
yeah,
by ear.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I think part of it comes from that. But yeah, I'd already learned from the other instruments how to kind of listen and
yeah,
try and play back. And I'd seen other drummers where they play with their right hand on the hi hat, so you've got to have your arms crossed while you're playing. And I remember thinking, well, I've got to learn how to play like that. So my right hand's going to be on the hi hat, and then I'm listening to what the drummer's doing and trying to play it back. And I played along with that song.
yeah,
Probably drove my parents nuts for a good couple of weeks, just playing that song over and over and over again.
yeah. Well, when you mentioned Michael Jackson, because I thought you were going to say Billie Jean, because I remember one of the guests on Ask the Drummer before, he said that it's actually a common drum
Yeah,
pattern practice. Billie Jean apparently is, what they
yeah,
practice on. So,
yeah.
but with
It's
you,
great
it's
because
a
it's
rap
really
song.
tight. It's a fairly simple beat,
Yeah,
but to
yeah,
do it
yeah,
right and for it to groove the way that it does, you've got to be right in the pocket with it. And
yeah, yeah,
it does teach you a lot about how to just groove.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, so you taught yourself how to play the drums, but you were still
yeah.
very
To
young
an
at the time.
extent, I did get lessons a little bit later on. So I had two drum teachers at different points in my learning.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I did have three. Maybe I had three. Yeah, very briefly had one other. Um, and the first guy, I can't remember what he's called. I think it might have been Greg, but he was at the drum centre in Eccles. In the
okay,
first site that it was, it's been in three different places. So uh, yeah, so the drum centre in Eccles, I had a guy there, and I think his name might have been Greg, but I can't remember.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I had him for a couple of years, um, and then I just felt like I was hitting a bit of a wall with him. He wasn't the right sort of teacher for me. So
okay,
I went back to just playing for myself, and then when I went um, when I went to high school, I had another drum teacher there.
something.
They got a drum teacher in at the school, and I had lessons at school with a guy called Andy Bold, who is a phenomenal jazz drummer, plays a lot around
Oh,
Manchester.
right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and he's brilliant, and he taught me a lot. And I got up to my grade 5 through him. And then there was another guy whose name I also can't remember. When I was at college, we did we were doing rock school exams, and they
yeah.
wanted everybody to try and learn how to get through exams with the instrument that they learned. So I did um, my rock school grade 8 on drums,
Oh,
and I had a teacher for all of about 5 or 6 weeks, I think, before I did that exam.
oh,
But
wow. So
yeah,
so you've done,
so I did go through all my grades and everything as well. Yeah,
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 yeah. But
a
how
long
old
time
were you?
ago.
A long time ago, because when you posted about the guest announcement on your Facebook page, because you
Mhm.
mentioned that you've got a first band which is The Void, and I tried to look for it on
Yeah,
Google, but
there's not that much of it because it was.
it's giving me a different
I
kind of
think.
band. Because
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, the different was called The Void, and it's I thought it was that one. They're from Huddersfield, but then they moved to
No, it's
Manchester.
not
And I was
them.
totally thinking, no, it can't be that one because
Yeah,
you're definitely from Manchester. You're not from Huddersfield. So,
yeah,
after you've done all your lessons and with the drumming and everything, this is your first band?
yeah. So,
Really?
so I had a I had a band very briefly in school called
Yeah.
the Links, I think, and we were trying to write Oasis songs, but that was like junior school, and then
Okay. All right.
that kind of continued a little bit in high school and then petered out. But my first proper band was a band called The Void.
Yeah.
I met a guy called Joe at City College Manchester when I was there.
Yeah.
Um, and he's uh, yeah, really cool, really into like 60s stuff. So he was massively into the Who, the Beatles, the Stones,
Okay. Yeah.
all of those sorts of guys, and the Kinks, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I was kind of into a lot of that stuff too. So we got on really, really well. So he was a guitarist. He's now a teacher. He teaches music for a living. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we started a band called The Void, and we didn't do much in the way of like touring, but it felt we did a lot in terms of writing songs and creating new music. Um, but it was kind of, when was this? Probably about 2005, something like that. And so
Oh,
MySpace was kind of the thing
yeah.
for
Yeah.
people
That's right.
sharing music, and there wasn't, I don't know. You still had to have money behind you to be able to make a proper recording, because home recording was kind of in a bit of an infancy then, and certainly as a drummer, home recording is always quite a minefield. It's quite a difficult thing to do with the
Yeah.
industry going the way that it is. Trying to get decent recordings at home as a drummer, it's still quite difficult, particularly if you want to play drums like drums and not just hit electronic pads, you know.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
So you didn't
so
release anything. So you there wasn't any because on Discogs I tried
no,
as well, but
we've
uh
we've we've got some little bits. I'll send you some stuff.
oh,
We got some stuff recorded at my college, but we never really managed to release anything because it still felt like at that point you needed to be signed to be able to properly release music. You needed to be able to
okay.
be signed to be able to release stuff on Apple Music and
Yeah,
iTunes and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Um, and Spotify wasn't a thing yet, and still the majority of record sales were physical sales of CDs, or
yeah, yeah,
you know. So it was very difficult, I think, to try and release music without being seen by somebody who would sign you and take you on. And we were playing a lot of gigs around Manchester, and we did quite a few around Chester and stuff, and we got ourselves some pretty good slots, but we never quite, I don't know, we didn't quite hit the mark with anybody actually signing us and turning
yeah,
us into something more than what we could have been, really, I think. But it was
yeah,
still one of the best bands that I was ever in, because we were all so dedicated, and we rehearsed, once, sometimes twice a week, and we were
yeah,
always writing new songs, and it was more a live band. Like we all bounced off each other really, really well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Are you still in touch with
yeah,
him? With Joe and the
yeah,
others?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I'm still in touch with all of them, except for I I haven't spoken to the lead singer for a little while. Not because we don't get on or anything. I just, we haven't been in touch. Whereas
you're
I'm
busy
quite
times.
regularly in touch with Joe, and the bassist that we had, a guy called Sam. I play with him still quite a lot whenever I'm back in Manchester and I have the time to be able to dedicate to that. In fact, I did a really, really good little gig in lockdown, um, with Jake Fletcher, who's Paul Weller's bassist.
Yeah, okay,
Um,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
also an amazing guitarist, singer, songwriter, multi instrumentalist, plays a bit of everything. And I did a gig with him and Sam, the bassist from The Void,
yeah,
and Steve Hill, who's the George Harrison in the Bootleg Beatles. And we did a live stream thing doing all early Fleetwood Mac stuff, and that was really cool with Sam on bass. So whenever
yeah.
there's an opportunity for me to get Sam a gig, I always try and get him involved, because he's still, after all these years, he's still kind of my go-to bassist. He just knows the way that I play, and I know the way that he plays, and we can just give each other a look, and we know where we're heading. So
It's not
particularly
sad.
if it's something last minute or a pub gig or something
Yeah,
where I need a bassist like in an instant, he'll be the first person that I call because
yeah.
I know he'll do the job. You know.
Is
Yeah.
it Sam Wilson from Rainband? It's a
Yes.
different.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It's Sam
he.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So he joined me in the Rain Band later on. Yeah. Yes.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so that was like 2005. Because
Hmm.
so did you have any other band before the Rain Band? Because I've found out from Google that the Rain Band was actually formed in 2010. So it's 2010. So it's only like 5 years between the
Yeah.
Void
Yeah.
and
Well,
the Rain.
the Void were still going at the time when I joined the Rain Band, but we were
Okay,
kind of slowing down our because Joe had moved to Bristol at that point, and everyone was kind of getting full-time jobs because you can't make money out of
music.
it's very difficult to make money out of music if you're playing original stuff, particularly very difficult. If you're playing covers, then you can earn money. There's ways of doing it, but
Yeah.
we were always an originals band, so that we were kind of doing it more for fun at that point. But
Uh,
then the
yeah.
Rain Band came along, and yeah,
But
they
you're
made
the
me.
original. You're the original drummer of the Rain Band. The-
Yes, yeah. So the Rain Band kind of started out um, with Martin and Phil,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I knew those two from like open mic nights around Urmston, and they were sort of singing, doing lots of singer-songwriter stuff, and they were already kind of gigging, not necessarily under the name The Rain Band, but they had this idea of creating this band, The Rain Band, um,
Okay. Yeah.
at that time, and I was the first person they approached to play drums for them, and so
Oh, okay.
it
All
was
right.
kind of started, but then yeah, I joined as a drummer,
Yeah.
and they asked me to find a bassist, and I brought Sam's older brother
So,
Joe.
okay.
Um, he was our first bassist, and he was with us
Okay.
for all of about 6 weeks, and then he moved to Bristol.
And then Sam
Then
joined.
we had another bassist called
Oh,
Steve
okay.
Ashworth, who we had for a good year or so, and then we had Paul Daggett, who we had for a good 3 or 4 years, and then Sam Wilson joined
Oh, I
again,
see. Okay.
and Joe as well. Joe from the Rain Band, he
Yeah.
was the guy that I was with in the Void. So it was me, Sam,
Okay.
and Joe
And
with a
Joe.
guy
Okay.
called Callum on vocals. That was the Rain Band. But
Oh,
yeah, it ended up
okay.
with with Sam
Yeah.
and Joe in the Rain Band
But
later on. Yeah.
were you aware that there's already a band called Rain Band? Not the Rain Band, but Rain Band. And apparently they were formed they were around in about 2003, which is like they were there before the Rain.
Yeah, we didn't know anything about them at the time
And they're from
when we
Manchester as
formed.
well. They're a Manchester band.
Yeah.
And the thing was, I actually got a couple of their singles. So when I
Oh,
saw
really?
when I saw the Rain Band advertised and it say it's called Manchester Band, I thought, oh, I've got a couple of singles from of the Rain Band,
Oh,
and
wow.
then it's a good thing that I didn't bring it with me. That I googled first because
Mhm.
it wasn't the same band. It was a different
Yeah.
band.
Yeah, so I'd heard about them, and I think I don't know whether any of them are still active. I've never had any real contact with any of them, but I did hear about it, and then
Yeah,
I think I read somewhere that they'd stopped doing any sort of gigs or tours, and that's why we decided to stick with the name after after we'd heard about
yeah.
them, I guess.
Because there
Um,
were people were saying that there was going to be the next big thing. There was like and they're very good, but I was like thinking it can't be the same one. But let me just sort of like check. Because imagine sort of like asking
yeah.
you, saying, "Can you sign this, please?" And it's like, oh, that's not
Oh, I'd
us.
still sign it.
So you weren't aware of Rain Band before, but
Yeah,
when
so we
when
didn't know about them at all. Yeah, it was just weird that we picked the same name.
yeah,
And I think the name. for us, it came from the fact that our guitarist is called Phil Rainey, and and
Oh,
I think it was Martin's idea to call them the Rain Band. Yeah, it was weird. Yeah,
yeah, that's
there
good.
we go.
And also, because these are all, I mean, 2010 wasn't that long ago. It was only like 15 years ago. And now I
Yeah.
realized your manager, Greg Morton, is a friend of mine.
Oh, you know Greg. Oh,
Greg
he's
Morton
lovely,
is
Greg.
a friend of the Filipino community in Manchester.
Yeah.
It's like
Well.
when I saw him at night and day, I was like, "What are you doing here?" And then he said that
Yeah. Yeah.
he's your manager.
Yeah. Well, he was our producer. He produced
A
all of our
producer,
recordings pretty much.
yeah.
Aside from a few of the early ones, he did the albums. Um, yeah, he did the majority of our recordings with us. So yeah, yeah. Oh, it's lovely that you know Greg. That's cool.
He's so good because, um, well, around this time, I'm sure it's around this time when I used to go to karaoke nights and like Greg would be there, or because
Yeah, yeah.
it was like,
Phenomenal singer, phenomenal
oh yeah,
singer, phenomenal cellist, phenomenal keyboard
yeah,
player.
yeah.
He's a machine when it comes to music. Yeah, yeah, he's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, Aiden said that he also, of course, he knows Greg because he's, like I said, Greg is a friend of the Filipino community in Manchester. So
hmm.
we've we've known each other for a few years now. And I
Oh,
remember when Britain's Got Talent had a Filipino lady on it, like
yeah.
Madonna Senna. Greg's also a friend of hers, so
Hmm.
he used to come to a lot of the Filipino parties as well. So
Yeah,
and the one thing that he said to me, he said that I have seen Martin perform before with him. So like I think he was the solo, and I just totally forgot about it because the reason why I went to see the Rain Band is because it says from Night and Day that it's a cult Manchester band.
yeah,
So it was like, oh my god, I've got to be there. I've got to see this because
yeah.
in Manchester music, I've always loved Manchester music. So I wanted to know more about all these Manchester bands, and I'm glad I did because that gig was absolutely amazing.
Oh, I'm
And
glad you enjoyed it. It
I
was a real
really,
special one for us as well. That because
yeah,
we hadn't.
it,
It was a funny thing the way that the I kind of left the Rain Band because so much was happening with the bootleg Beatles and everything, and I was on
yeah,
tour a lot as a tech, and I didn't really have the real time to be able to dedicate to it anymore. And then it kind of it kind of got to a point where I was hardly seeing any of them or anything like that, and then this opportunity came up sort of 10 years after we'd played our last show or thereabouts. It must have been about 10 years since I played a gig with the Rain Band. They'd done other stuff since. I think they played up until about 5 or 6 years ago.
yeah,
um well,
yeah,
probably 4 or 5 years ago, probably just pre-lockdown, I think, was when they did their last stuff before that. um and then yeah, we were asked to play a gig in Italy, because we had a bit of a following in Italy,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. That's right. Yeah,
and so we'd done quite a lot out there. And there's a radio DJ guy called DJ Ringo, who's the uh, he's like one of the main DJs on Virgin Radio in Italy,
in it.
and he
Okay.
was curating a festival for Harley Davidson, bike festival. And because we'd
Oh,
got a little bit of a connection with the bikes from the single that we released for Marco Simoncelli, he was like, I need you guys on the bill because you guys are you're the bike band. Like, I can't do this festival and be asked to curate the bill and put together all the bands that I think should be on that stage without asking you guys. So will you do it?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so Martin phoned me up and told me this, and I thought, well, I've not seen you guys and properly played with you for ages, but yeah, I'm well up for that. If I've got the space free in my diary that weekend, so we should do
Yeah.
it. So we
How
did
did
this
you?
one-off gig in
Yeah, yeah.
Italy, and then we got a little bit of a backlash from all of our Manchester fans saying, "Oh, so you're gonna get together and do a gig, and you're not doing one in Manchester? What's going on?" So we thought, right, okay, we'll have to get back together and do something in Manchester, and that was the night that you came along,
But
and it
how
was
did
the
that?
first time we played together in ages, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what was the connection? How why are you connected to this bike? So is it Harley Davidson? You said so.
Yeah,
What's the
so
story?
it's just generally speaking, just the biking community. I mean, it wasn't really a Harley Davidson. That event was a Harley Davidson event, but we're
Yeah.
quite well connected with biking generally because of the single that we released for Marco Simoncelli.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
um, so Marco Simoncelli um, he was a phenomenal um, bike rider for like uh, the name's gone out of my head. So MotoGP is kind of like the Formula One for bikes,
For bikes. Okay.
and
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
he was kind of tipped to be like the next big racer. So in MotoGP, there's a guy called Valentino Rossi. He's like the equivalent of Michael Schumacher in in racing terms,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
wins everything and like the biggest name in the sport. Um, and then Uh, so Marco Simoncelli was kind of tipped to be the next Valentino Rossi, and everyone thought that he was going to be the next big name of the sport. Um, and then he had a terrible accident in Sepang and lost his life on one of the races.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And um, so we were asked, as far as I understand it, Martin and Phil might have a slightly different version. I can't really properly recall. But as
Yeah.
far as I understand it, we were going to be playing um, a gig at the MotoGP at Silverstone, um, just kind of as another gig that was going to be in our diary. But following this accident, and it was the first time that the MotoGP was um, coming to the UK and going to Silverstone since Marco had had his accident. And Martin's nephews were big Marco Simoncelli fans. We thought it would be a good idea to do a tribute to Marco at,
Right.
at
Okay.
the gig. And we were umming and ahhing over what sort of, um, what song we could play as a bit of a tribute. And we were thinking about doing like some sort of a cover, something that he would have liked or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
nothing seemed to fit. And we'd got a song that we'd started writing but hadn't quite finished. And then we heard that there was a charity that had been set up in Marco's name. And we thought, well, actually, the song that we'd already started writing, that kind of sounds like it could be about Marco, and we could finish it off and make it about Marco.
Oh,
And then we
yeah.
could gift that song to the charity,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
can make money that really
Yeah.
helps people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a good way of us being able to sort of raise the profile of the Marco Simoncelli Foundation from the stage um, uh,
Yeah.
at Silverstone, and that was kind of all we thought of it. And then the motorcycle press kind of got involved in it, and then it kind of escalated, and we ended up with James Toseland, who's the British he was a British superbike champion and a massive name in motorsport. He's also an amazing pianist and singer. Um, and
Oh,
he offered to get involved, so he
yeah.
recorded
Yeah.
all the piano parts on the track, and then because of his name involved in it and everything, it became this
And
big thing, and we ended up touring around with the MotoGP,
oh, that's
and making
fun.
lots of money for the charity, and the charity's doing really, really well. And I I've no idea what the total amount is raised, but tens of thousands for sure. Yeah,
Oh wow, that's
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad that you told me the story behind that one because
Yeah, yeah. Well, everyone always says, "What's the connection between you guys and motorbikes?" I don't really get it. And
maybe you're
it
all
was
like
one of those things
right?
where it was little things that kind of led us there. And it sounds weird, the fact that, some Manchester band who has none of us really had any massive interest in motorbikes, and none of us ride motorbikes. And then we're suddenly doing this thing, and we're part of the biking community. And it was weird, but it was small steps that kind of led us there, and it was all kind of organic the way that it happened. And I'm really glad that it did, because we've made so much money for that
For the
charity, and we've really raised the profile, and also it helped us as well. It gave us the opportunity to play in some amazing places, and off the back of doing things with the MotoGP, we end up doing things like supporting Paolo Nutini, and going around Italy supporting Simple Minds, and things
yeah,
like that. It was an incredible thing you know for us as well. It's
yeah, yeah,
We did it for the right reasons and trying to make money for the charity, but it really helped
for the band,
define
yeah,
us in a lot of ways. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And now that people are talking about Glastonbury, you played in Glastonbury. It's on the main stage in 2013. What was that?
yeah.
What was that like? I
That
mean, you
was that
can't
was.
really sing that. It's an
Um,
honor.
it wasn't the main stage. We played. With the bootleg Beatles. We did the main stage, and
Oh, yeah. But the Rain Band
yeah,
did well. The
the
Rain Band.
Rainband did the Williams Green stage. We
Okay,
were
yeah.
on the same stage as Willie Nelson, and with Parlour Flames as well, which was Bonehead's band at the time, with
Right.
Bonehead and Vinnie Peculiar, who were really, really lovely, because their their bassist at the time was a guy called Ollie Collins. And when I was at college, Ollie taught bass at my college. So when I was having drum lessons with the guy whose name I can't remember, um, he was teaching bass to all the bassists. And so when we played at Glastonbury that year on the Williams Green stage, I saw Ollie Collins, and I was like, "Ollie, what are you doing? How's things?" And he was like, "Oh, well, I'm here with Bonehead. I'm playing bass for Bonehead." Uh, I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." I said, "Whereabouts are you camped?" Well, he said, "Well, we're playing on the Williams Green stage, so we're just camped just behind it. Why don't you come and camp with us if you're on the same stage as us?" So I spent the weekend camped with Ollie and Bonehead with the Rain Band, and it was great. Bonehead cooked me sausages one morning,
Oh,
so so that was really cool, and he's dead sweet, dead lovely. Yeah.
yeah.
But
But
the actual gig itself was
yeah,
amazing. It was really, really cool. Just being on stage at Glastonbury is
yeah,
it's one of
yeah,
those things. It's the pinnacle for a lot of bands to get to perform at Glastonbury, and I'm really
yeah.
proud to say that we did it. And yeah,
I mean,
it was a really
it's
special gig.
amazing. Yeah. I, I mean, when I was young, I always thought, well, I'll go to Glastonbury, but
Mhm.
it's nowadays. I mean, it's not really for me. I don't like outdoor festivals. I mean,
Yeah,
this weekend I'm going to Shine On, and that's good because for me, you stay in a chalet and you can have a shower, you can have a
yeah,
rest,
yeah.
a rest. So that for me is my music festival. But so that was 2013. But then you left
Mhm.
the band in 2015.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, can I
yeah.
just ask why? Why did they-
Well, it was a mixture of factors. I think there was a lot going on in the thing that you have to kind of remember is that when you're a band like we were, um, like our biggest single was a charity single, and so all the money from that went straight to the charity. The majority of our gigs, we were doing support slots for people where you don't get paid,
Yeah.
and we got Glastonbury and stuff, and that didn't really pay. Playing on smaller stages, you don't really get the same. You don't
Oh,
get the money that a lot of people, that you do anywhere else. So we were all desperately trying to make that band work and to make it something that would pay the bills.
yeah.
And and I think I got to a stage where I was just like, I'm taking all of my time off from work to be able to go and work with the Rain Band. I was working in a pub at the time alongside being
Oh,
in that band,
yeah. Yeah.
trying to make ends meet, trying to
Yeah.
make it work.
Yeah.
And it's really, really difficult. And I think I got to a point where, I had a girlfriend at the time, and we never got to go on holidays and stuff together because all of my holidays were all taken up from work to go and do rain band
Gigs.
things.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and there was a lot of pressure from all of that. And then there was also opportunities for me to go and do teching work with the bootleg Beatles. um, that was all starting to come together. And I think it a lot of things just came to a head, and I thought, I can't keep
Yeah. Yeah.
giving myself to everything and getting next to nothing back in terms of money. I
Yeah.
still need
Yeah.
to be able to make a living. And I was desperate for it to work for them all. Even after I'd left, I hoped that it would work for the
For the
guys with
band.
with
Yeah.
Jay on drums, and
Yeah.
that they would go on to bigger and better things. And they kept pushing and pushing, and I think, now everybody's kind of got their own careers and everybody earns enough money, and now we kind of we get together more for the enjoyment of it and for the fun of it, and to know
Yeah.
that, we created something there that people love. And okay, it might never have made us a lot of money, but it meant something to people, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
still means something to us, and it's nice to indulge in that when
Yeah.
when it
Yeah.
suits. Yeah.
When's the next Rain Band gig?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to speak to the guys, but we have, like on the last rehearsal that we did before that gig, we Martin had some new ideas that he was trying out with us, and we jammed over some stuff, and it was sounding really good. So I think once I finish this tour that we're currently on, with the bootlegs,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm away for another
Three. Yeah.
3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
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 Once I get back from that, I'm going to have a little bit more time at home, and hopefully, at some point
New
within that
material.
time off, we'll get
The
everybody together, and we'll just see where it leads. Even if we might sit in a rehearsal room a couple of times and go, yeah, it's fun, but it's not working. Or we might go, oh, this could be the next really good thing.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's get in the studio and do it. But there's no
Oh, fingers
there's no
crossed. Yeah.
pressure, and that's the thing that I think really works with that band. The fact that there isn't really any pressure anymore for it to kind of be anything more than something that we can enjoy, and we can
Yeah.
create
Yeah.
content that other people will enjoy. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Of
it's
course.
good.
So you mentioned the bootleg Beatles. So you became like a session drummer and a tech or a drum tech.
Yeah, yeah. So I was the drum tech for the Bootleg Beatles for um, for 11 years, and then I've recently taken over as keyboard player,
Keyboard player.
percussionist,
Yeah.
tabla player. So I do get to hit some drums every now and again, but I'm not behind a drum kit, sadly. Um, but yeah, so I teched for the bootlegs for 11 years, and I ended up getting other drum tech work, setting up drums and looking after drums the um, for the Bay City Rollers
Yeah. Yeah.
and the Lightning Seeds more recently as well.
Yeah.
Um, and every now and again, being in being there as the other drummer that doesn't actually get to play drums because you're setting up the drum kit for the drummer. Every now and again, you get a little bit of something where somebody says, "Oh, would you mind playing drums for this thing? Because the regular drummer can't do it."
Oh,
So, um, so one of the biggest gigs I ever did, the I was working for Les McEwen's Bay City Rollers. So, the Bay City Rollers?
oh
They were,
yes, yes,
yeah,
yeah. Bye, bye,
big,
baby.
yeah, big in the 70s. And um, so I worked for Les, who was the main sort of lead singer
Yeah,
from the
exactly.
time
Yeah,
when they were at their biggest.
yeah,
Um, and he was touring his own rollers show called Les McEwen's Legendary Bay City Rollers. And it was him with his own backing band. Um, and so I'd gigged with him for, I think, probably a couple of years. I'd been working as his drum tech and driving all
yeah,
the gear around from show to show. And he got an offer um, uh, from a guy who wanted to put the original Bay City Rollers back together and do a tour. So he got Les, Alan, and Woody all together,
yeah, yeah,
and and we had Les's backing band as the main band because they already had a show. It all worked, so it was just a case of slotting Alan and
the
Woody into
original.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it was the first time that those three guys had been on stage together for about 30 years, I think. So it was a real big deal. And they were one of the biggest exports from Scotland.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah,
Um, and anyway, this all kind of happened fairly quickly towards the back end of the year that all of this was starting to happen. And Leslie's drummer had his own gig booked for New Year that he'd put together himself, so he had to be there.
okay.
And it was just him and his friends, and
Yeah,
it was a
yeah.
big New Year celebration. Um, and so he couldn't make the gig that they got offered for New Year, which was to play live on BBC One Scotland at
Let's
the
put a whole
stroke of
grenade.
midnight.
Yeah.
And so they were talking about the possibility of getting a session drummer in, and I said, "Well, hang on a second, guys. I've I'm a session drummer myself. I've done it. I've been there, done it, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be with you in every sound check for the next, you know, 2 weeks leading up to that gig. I can rehearse with you, and then we can have it absolutely down and perfect." And they said, "Well, let's try it out. Let's see how it fits. Let's do a little rehearsal in sound check." And straight after that, they were like, "Yeah, okay, you're doing it." Um, so I ended up playing drums for
Yeah.
Les, Alan, and Woody, playing
But were you a
Shangalang and Bye Bye Baby, and
were you a fan though? I mean, were you already a fan of Bay City Rollers, or is it something that you
no, I wouldn't say I was, but the
it was
thing is, like,
before you. It was like it was before you
yeah,
were born.
absolutely, and it's kind of in a lot of ways seen as being sort of throwaway pop of its time. I think in a lot of ways, but I really liked working for the guys. And actually, when you listen to some of those records, particularly the drum parts, there's some really cool bits. Like particularly on Shangalang, it's great
Yeah,
fun to drum to. It's like it might be sort of cheesy throwaway pop, or you might see it that way, but actually, it's a good fun track to drum to, and the opportunity to play on that sort of a stage, getting to play on BBC One Scotland at the stroke of midnight with
yeah, yeah.
with this legendary Scottish
Yeah,
band
yeah, yeah.
was a real privilege. So yeah, so it was
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you this: a drum tech.
Yeah.
So what's the main job? So making is it making sure that the drum kit is like what do you call it?
Yeah.
Because with the guitar, they do all these, like checking that the strings are okay and everything. So,
Yeah,
drum tech, you just make sure that it's sounding okay, that the drum kit is sounding okay.
yeah. Well, it's not just sound. It's how how the drums are set up in terms of the positions of each of the drums, so that basically your job is to make sure that the drum set is set up and sounding great um, as per what the drummer wants. So you've got to
Okay.
make sure that the position of the drum stool, the kick drum, the snare, and everything, that they're all in the positions that the drummer
Yeah,
who's
yeah,
playing that kit expects them to be in, and that the maintenance of that kit is right and everything's done. So like if something breaks, it's your job to fix that. So if the thread goes on a particular bolt or anything, you need to replace that bolt and get that fixed and get it working again. If a
yeah,
drum skin is broken, then you need to change it. Or if they're starting to get a little bit worn or whatever, then you change the skins. You're
yeah.
tuning the drums and making sure that they're all working together. You're cleaning the drums and stuff as well, and making sure that everything's looking and sounding as good as it can be, so that you know, because there's so many components to a drum kit,
I
and
know, yeah,
it
yeah. So
takes a
it's
lot of
dismantling
does
after
take
the
a lot of
fail.
yeah,
That's your job
dismantling
as
it all
well.
and making it yeah. So
So,
it's looking after it all and making sure that it all functions as it's supposed to, and that it sounds as good as it can. Yeah,
yeah. So let's
yeah,
talk about lightning seeds because you're lightning
yeah.
seeds drum techs. You're doing it for Jim Sharrock.
Yes, yeah. So it was Jim who got me the job. Yeah, um, yeah. I did a gig. Um, I did what was that? So Steve Pilgrim, who's
Oh yeah,
Paul
yeah,
Weller's drummer.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he's a good friend of mine. The Rainband did quite a few gigs with Steve, and Steve did some of our early recordings as well. He
Okay.
produced all the recordings that we did um, at Par Street Studios.
Oh
Steve
right, okay.
produced those for us, so that
Yeah.
was really cool. So I'd known him for a little while, and he puts on those gigs at St. Michael's
St.
in Liverpool.
Michael's. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So um, he was doing a gig. It was one of the first ones after lockdown, and he'd recorded his new album during lockdown with Paul Weller playing keyboards. And um, and he was doing a gig at St. Michael's, and Paul Weller was playing keyboards for him, and Jim Sharrock was on drums for him, and I went along and looked after his guitar and bits and pieces, and then packed away Jim's drum kit for him at the end of the night, just sort of as a friend, and because I'd not really got anything else on that night, and I thought, well, I'll go down and I'll help them out, and they were, yeah, pleased to have me around by the sounds of things, and yeah, and so that was the first time I packed Jim's drum kit away, and then he got to the next. He'd already taken off the Lightning Seeds logo from the front of his drum kit because it wasn't a Lightning Seeds gig,
Yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah.
put the Lightning Seeds drum skin back on because I knew he was doing that gig next, and packed all his drum kit away and put it all in the van and everything. And he got to the next gig and he said, "Oh, you put the drum skin back on for me, and my drum kit's packed away really nicely." It was like, "We need a drum tech on the next tour. I don't suppose you're available." And I was like, "Yes, absolutely, of course I am." So yeah, sometimes doing things for free and just doing them
I
nicely
know,
and doing them
yes.
well for friends, it
Yeah, yeah,
pays you a lot of dividends. So I ended up, yeah, teching for the Lightning Seeds uh, for a good 2.5 years. I'm not doing so much with them anymore because the bootlegs are so busy. But I'm hoping to get on a couple more gigs this
yeah.
summer with any luck.
Well, they've just
But we'll see.
announced another tour in October.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
you're not doing a bootleg Beatles, you can be Jim Sharrock's drum tech.
Yeah, well,
Now I
hopefully.
understand how Jim can actually go and mingle with the fans because he doesn't have to pack his own drum kit. You're the one who's doing
Well, that's it. That's it. He's got somebody else to do it on that tour. So there
it.
we go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's absolutely amazing because um, sometimes the drummers will say, "No, you've got to do. You know, it's your drum kit. You've got to do it yourself. You've got to pack it yourself and everything." But that's where the drum tech comes in, is because they can do other things like meeting fans, and then
Well, yeah,
the
yeah.
drum,
There is
the
that, but
drum tech
also,
can do.
if if you're at a if you're at a stage where the band that you're playing for is playing, it's making real money every
Yeah,
night,
yeah,
then you want to make sure that you can put on the very best show that you can put on. And a lot of that is down to looking after the band and the people that are playing on stage and making sure that they're doing what they're trained to do. And at the end of the day, Jim is there as a drummer. He's there
yeah,
to play drums and to the best of his ability. And if he does his backing by lifting his drum kit into, and setting it up,
yeah,
then that's no good for the show. So anything that you can do to kind of, that's why you never see the band setting up their own gear when they get to a certain level, because they're earning enough money that they shouldn't be in that position where they could
yeah,
potentially injure themselves lugging stuff in and out of the back of the van and setting it up on stage and that sort of thing. So you
yeah,
want to make sure that you know that the band's interest is in playing on stage and playing as well as they can, rather
yeah,
than potentially putting them in situations
yeah,
where they might get injured, or
yeah.
you know
Well, funnily enough, because
or
I have been to,
even just the stress of setting up
yeah,
drum
of
kits and
course,
stuff sometimes, particularly when something's broken and you can't
yeah,
find a spare part for it, all that sort of thing. If that's taken out of the hands of the person who's performing on stage, then that's well worth it. Yeah.
yeah. But I have been to a few Lightning Seeds gig. I have to say that I've not seen you. I always see, John.
Yeah, yeah,
I always
yeah.
see John, and I forgot the name of the merch guy. I often see him and John, but I've never seen you. So I've never
Yeah,
seen you do lightning seeds. But maybe it's because I only met you in January. But next time I go and see
yeah,
lightning
yeah,
seeds,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like I said, I did them for a good couple of years, and I haven't been on so many of the gigs over the past sort of 6 months or so because the bootlegs kind of taking up all of my time. So yeah,
yeah.
so I've not been doing so much with them recently, sadly.
What's
Yeah.
Ian Brody like?
Oh, he's lovely. He's really, really nice. Yeah, yeah. No, he's one of the sweetest, most kind-hearted people you'll ever meet. He's definitely like, I don't know what the right word is, but like he's really passionate about music, and and so he can be quite opinionated when it comes to music, I think, but in the right reasons. And I think
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
he is that way because he knows what makes a good song and what makes a
oh
good
yeah,
hit. But
yeah,
also, you've got to keep your opinions quite be quite strict with what your opinions are in music if you're going to be making music and you want to make stuff that is you, and
yeah,
and that's the thing that I love about Ian's songwriting. It doesn't sound like anybody else, and
yeah,
he knows where he draws the
yeah,
line for himself with everything. Um,
yeah.
and everything that the Lightning Seeds do it sounds like a Lightning Seeds record. And so you don't want to mess with that. You don't want to go,
No,
well, no, no. I think you're wrong about your opinion on that band. You don't you don't want to do that
yeah. No, we
because
love Ian
yeah,
Brody. I mean, in the Philippines, he's one of those music heroes in the Philippines. And The reason why I'm saying this is because you have been to the Philippines as part
Yes,
of the
yeah,
Bootleg Beatles. You played not the drums but keyboards when you went to. So
yes,
what
yeah.
was it like? What was your Manila experience like?
Oh, it was amazing. It's amazing. We've we've I've done Manila twice now. Um,
All right.
once was at the plenary hall, and I think we did 2 nights back to back there. Uh,
Wow.
I can't remember where we were on the last one. That's gone out of my head.
So
Um,
like
but yeah,
the
it's such
yeah
an
yeah. I
amazing
see now, isn't
place.
it? Yeah yeah.
It's Yeah, it's phenomenal. I love it, and we had a good yeah. We took a bit of a trip out. We went in the little jeepneys and oh, it's just the coolest place. I really love it, and it's the people are also lovely, and it's a little bit there's something a bit Wild Westy about it at times, you know. But but I like that. I like that. I like the sense of adventure that you get from somewhere
Yeah.
like Manila.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a
I'm
special place.
surprised.
It's really
I'm
cool.
surprised that they let you out because normally it would be with bodyguards. You have
Yeah,
bodyguards.
we have done with the on previous years we've had bodyguards. Um but yeah, this time I don't know, it felt somehow safer somehow. And I
Okay.
think because I'd been a couple of times before,
Yeah, yeah,
um and I think you know, we thought, well, we're going out during the day. We're quite streetwise, the people that I was with, um, and I think we were just like, well, you know what, we'll do it. We'll do it
yeah,
properly, and
yeah.
it'll be nice. And
It's,
it was fun. It was great, and
yeah.
um, we did.
You probably got familiar. You got familiar with the place, anyways, after the second time you've been.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously there are parts that are sort of more no-go areas for tourists,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah.
other parts that are certainly a lot safer. And I think we kind of knew
Where
where
to
to
go?
avoid and where to go. Yeah, yeah. But it
And
was
you know,
great. I loved it.
yeah.
It's great fun.
Oh, it's good to know that. Were you fed well in the Philippines? That's one of the
Sorry, what
things.
was that?
Were you fed well? They gave you like lots of good
Yes, yeah.
food.
The food was amazing. Yeah, yeah. No, the food was incredible. Yeah, yeah. And
The
just
reason,
the fresh fruit and stuff around there is just incredible. Like the produce that they have
yeah,
is
yeah.
beautiful, and we had some amazing seafood and things as well. And yeah, no, it was brilliant.
No, the reason why is because when the wedding present went there, and then I
Yes,
remember asking David Gedge about it, and then the first thing he said, we were fed well.
yeah, yeah.
I thought, oh,
No, that's very true. Yeah, the hospitality over there is amazing. They really look after you. Yeah.
yeah, so you're touring with the Bootleg Beatles right now. And I want to
Hmm.
say thank you because you got me introduced to Gordon Elsmore, who's the Ringo of the Bootleg Beatles.
Yes, yeah. That'll be a
So,
really interesting conversation
yeah,
um because you know the bootleg Beatles for where they're they are the biggest Beatle tribute band out
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah,
There are lots of Beatle tributes over the world, but the bootleg Beatles have kind of got this name as being the biggest, the best, the most accurate. Um,
yeah, yeah,
and it's a really different craft as a drummer to learn how to play drums like somebody else. You know, I think for me as a drummer, I've always been quite. I put a lot of my personality into the way that I play. I might not be the most technically gifted drummer, um, but I definitely put my personality into what I do, and I think that's
yeah,
why I get work as a drummer. I think people like the way that I play when I
yeah,
play like me. Um, Whereas for Gordon, you know, he's got to play like Ringo, and of course, Ringo was he was a left-handed drummer. He wasn't he wasn't
yeah,
actually right-handed. He played on a right-handed kit, but he would do weird things like leading with his left hand, which you never do if you're a right-handed drummer. You'd always start any sort of lick with your right, really, he would sort of lead with his left hand and move the wrong way around the kit. So his drum fills are quite interesting and quite different sounding, and that's why when you listen to Ringo playing drums, it sounds like Ringo because he's got this weird way of playing, and
Yeah,
Gordon emulates that every night. And of course, the silhouette when you're in costume and everything is so important. The way that Ringo would sort of lift his shoulder when he's playing
yeah,
and stuff,
yeah, yeah,
learning how to do all of that to make you to give this illusion of Ringo Starr is on stage in front of me
yeah,
is a very difficult and very different thing to do. So I think that'll be a really interesting conversation
yeah.
with
I
Gordon
am. I
because
am looking forward.
it's a
Yeah,
very different take to all the rest of your podcast because
yeah.
he's
I'm
got
really
to
looking
pretend to be
forward to
somebody else.
that. So,
Yeah.
is he left-handed or is he? So he's
No, he's
right-handed.
right-handed and he's learned how
So
to
he's
play
got to.
like
Yeah,
Ringo
yeah.
and lead with his left and stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
But
Oh, that's
again, with
amazing.
the Paul McCartney and the bootlegs, he's a right-handed player. He's learned how to play bass left-handed so that he can look like Paul McCartney. It's unreal. They go to that sort of degree with everything that
Yeah, yeah. So
it's
are
amazing.
you? Because you play keyboards for them, but do you?
Yes, yeah.
Are you
But
also
I'm
the
also playing percussion as well for them as
oh
well,
percussion?
and
Right. Yeah.
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 So I do all tambourine bits and pieces, and
Yeah.
yeah,
But you,
tambourines,
are you also?
cowbells, and maracas, and then lots of keyboards and tabla
Yeah.
drums occasionally, and
Oh
all
wow.
sorts of stuff. Yeah,
But are
yeah,
you also the drum tech, or is it? Because I've just found
yeah,
out
yeah. So I do
before.
look after the drum kit as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
and that's a
wow.
really interesting kit because that's an original '60s Ludwig downbeat, the same as Ringo had, and it's an old girl, and it takes a lot of a lot of TLC to keep it
Maintenance.
running and to keep it on the road, and it's a beautiful thing, and it sounds amazing. It's
Yeah.
and the um, the drum mics on that drum kit as well. They're all on the inside of the drums because, of course, a lot of the time in the early days when Ringo was playing, he wouldn't have microphones on his drum kit. He definitely wouldn't have a big hole cut in his kick drum to have the microphone there.
Yeah.
So all the drums on that drum kit have got the microphones hidden on the inside of the drums where
Oh no way.
the viewer can't see them, and there's
Yeah.
little XLR connectors that go through the vent holes, so it doesn't ruin the drum, but the mic is mounted on the inside. It's an
Oh
amazing
wow.
little kit that. Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're the one who makes sure that everything is working
Yeah, yeah, and make
perfectly.
sure all those old bits of '60s hardware is still going strong. Yeah, yeah. It wobbles around a little bit when he's playing it, but that's part of the silhouette of Ringo because Ringo's kit used to wobble around on stage all over the
Yeah,
place
yeah,
because
yeah,
those skinny little stands are all, they're quite flimsy looking, and yeah, yeah. So the drums all move around him while he's playing. Yeah.
yeah. So what does Paul Bruce do? Because somebody told me that Paul Bruce is also now in the bootleg Beatles. So is
Yeah,
he
yeah. So he's looking after all the guitars
the
for us. As
guitars?
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
okay.
But mainly guitars for us for this one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
But he's
amazing.
another all-rounder tech. 'Cause I was looking after drums and guitars before I
Yeah.
joined on keyboards, and now I can tend to kind of look mostly after the drum kit and then play all the keyboard parts and bits and pieces. So yeah,
Do you know, it's amazing how you're all connected. It's
yeah. It's that old phrase of it's not what you know, it's who you know, and I
yeah,
think it's a bit of both. But I think really, this weird industry that we're all in, touring up and down the country in tour buses, sleeping on the road, waking up outside a venue, and playing a show. You're it's like this last tour that I've just done. We've been on the road for like 2 months, constantly in each other's space. So I think it kind of has to be a who you know sort of scenario, because you need to know somebody who you're going to be on the road in that quarters with, for so long. You need
Yeah.
to have somebody that you bounce off and that you gel off and that you gel with, and that isn't a difficult personality to have. It's always a balance between how talented somebody is and how easy they are to get on with in this industry. Because
Oh,
you're living on the road with these people all the time.
yeah, yeah,
So you can
yeah.
have the best player in the world, but if he's a really difficult person to be around with, he's not going to be on the road for very long. And likewise, you can have somebody who's really, really lovely, but terrible at their job, and they won't get any work either. You've got to strike that balance. So
Oh,
there's definitely always a bit of who you know, and I think that that always pays dividends, because people will always ask, people that they know. They'll go, "Oh, do you know a drummer who can help out on this gig? Do you know a tech who can help out on
yeah,
this
yeah,
other gig? Such and such a person's fallen ill, or he's left and gone on to something else. We need somebody, and I'm sure you must know somebody who's really good." And so it's all quite, intermingled between bands. They all tend to know each other because they do gigs with each other at festivals. They get each other's numbers, and they go, right, if I need a drummer for this thing, I'm going to call you because I
yeah,
know I get on really well with you and you're a great drummer, you know.
yeah. That's
So,
really interesting. Because life on the road. I mean, I'm not really into music. I will never be a musician, but that's the
mm,
sort of thing that I love. When you
mm,
see bands in like big tour bus and things, and you every night you go somewhere, you play in a city, and then you
mm.
go. I, for me, I think that's like the best life ever.
Yeah,
And it
yeah,
must
yeah.
be.
And
Do you
I,
enjoy
I can't
that kind
argue with that. But you've got to be a particular type of person. It's got to be for you, because you are away from home for a lot. And I think that's the thing that, is the most difficult about it. When you're on the road for 2 months and you don't see your family for two
Yeah,
months,
yeah, yeah,
that's where it starts to get difficult. But, you know, it is always a trade-off. I love my job. I love what I do. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
hoping that I'll continue to do it for a long time yet. But
Well,
but there is always that little thing of whenever I go away, I know I'm going to miss my girlfriend and the dog,
yeah,
and my mum and my sister and my
yeah,
nephews and all that sort of thing. You spend a lot of time away from home when you're touring, and yeah, it's difficult, but
yeah.
I
It's
know
easy
that I'm doing it
nowadays.
because I know that my personality belongs on the road.
On the road. Yeah.
Yeah,
And also with the phones, like talking, to someone, it's quite easy now. If you feel lonely, and you just
yeah, yeah.
ring
That's
them
it. That
and
that always
video
helps, and
calls.
it
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
makes things better. But yeah,
yeah, yeah.
nothing quite beats the actually
The
being in a room
real,
with
yeah.
somebody, does it?
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. I also wanted to ask you about the jailbirds because you mentioned that, and I
Yeah.
looked at your Facebook page. I noticed that Sam
Yes.
plays with you in the jailbirds.
Like I say, he is my go-to bassist. Whenever I get an opportunity, he's the first guy that I call.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did quite a lot with the Jailbirds. We don't do so much anymore. I'm hoping there'll be some more gigs in the future because I really enjoyed doing that. But we had a residency at the Cavern Club in
cabin
Liverpool,
club. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and that was just the coolest place. Just being able to play on that stage, and there's just a ready-made audience. They're all Beatle fans, so you know that if you play a Beatle number, they will respond to it.
yes, yes, yeah,
But we also know that Beatles fans love music by the Kinks, the Who, the Rolling Stones, all that sort of stuff. So we had this sort of 50s, 60s rock and roll covers thing, playing everything from Elvis to my generation or whatever. It's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's about as wide as the spectrum got, sort of thing. But I was really proud of how we sounded, because I think although we were playing covers and we kind of did them ourselves, I think all all three of us kind of have our roots in that 60s sort of
rock and
um,
roll.
rock and roll sort of sound.
Yeah,
So I remember we played a private party for Clint Boone a little while ago, and he said one of the things that he loved about our set
yeah,
was, he said it was like seeing a band from the 60s playing covers of 60s bands. He said it didn't feel sort of false. It felt like watching a covers band in the 60s playing those
no,
songs,
oh,
because you know we used to do everything quite authentically. So I would have my vintage 60s Premiere drum kit that's in the
yeah,
same size as Keith Moon's, and um so I had
oh,
that. And then um uh Drew used to play through a Vox AC30, and Sam would play a Vox Teardrop bass
yeah,
through a Fender Bassman. And so it kind of already, we're using sort of 60s instruments through 60s gear, and trying to sound like a band from the 60s playing covers of 60s songs. And it was
yeah.
it was really cool. Yeah, yeah, it was
You
great
didn't
fun.
wear you didn't wear any costumes though. You were just sort of like playing
No,
it. No
yeah,
costumes.
we wouldn't wear costumes necessarily. I mean,
Okay.
we would often dress kind of 60s styly sometimes, but not all the time. When it
Yeah,
when it
yeah,
seemed to suit. So often wear, like, black roll necks and like a tweed jacket or something like that.
yeah.
But
Well, I've
but it was
noticed.
great fun. It was really good.
Yeah, do you still do it? No, not anymore. I
Yeah,
guess.
we haven't done for about a year, but
Okay,
I
all
wouldn't
right.
say there's going to be no more gigs. I think we'll
Okay.
probably get together for something with any luck. I'm hoping
Because
so.
I
Yeah.
noticed that you actually, because the Shakers couldn't play it, so the Jailbirds did. So you must
Yes.
know Tony. You must know Tony O'Keefe
Yeah. Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
Shakers.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah. 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 Because we did quite a few with those guys. Yeah. The Shakers are lovely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's just incredible that meeting you after the Rain Band gig, and then
Mm.
discovering that you're actually all these bands and musicians that I know
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
love as well. So that's that for me. It's just really cool. And another thing that I discovered, you were born on the same day as me, 23rd. Is it
Oh,
23rd of
really?
September?
Oh, we share a birthday. Oh, great.
Birthday, because when I was when I was googling it for my script, there was a post from the Bootleg Beatles about saying happy birthday, and I looked at
Yeah.
the date, and it was the 23rd of September. I was like, oh my god, the same. We shared the same birthday as Bruce Springsteen as well, so that's quite
Yeah.
quite.
Well, that's a good one. Yeah.
Right, so no any future plans for the Rain Band just yet, but hopefully,
Hopefully there'll be something. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, and you're gonna go back on tour with the Bootleg Beatles.
Yep.
I know it's still we've already talked for about an hour, nearly an hour and a half, but I've got just four regular questions that I ask the guests, if you don't mind. So
Okay. Yeah.
first one is I didn't see you twirl when you were playing in the Rain Band. Do you do that? Do you twirl when you play?
I to be fair, now that when I'm playing like drums, I can twirl the sticks, but
Yeah,
I find it puts me off drumming. However, now when I'm playing uh, cowbell on Magical Mystery Tour, there's quite a few little gaps where I'm not doing anything. So when I'm out with the bootleg Beatles, you'll see me twirling my drumstick when I'm playing a cowbell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do that quite a lot. Keeps me entertained in the gaps where there's no cowbell.
Oh, that's good. But I forgot, but you're actually playing in Manchester, aren't you? The Bootleg Beatles are
Yes,
playing.
yeah, in
I
December.
forgot the date.
Oh
December.
no,
Okay.
we've got one at Gorilla in
Yeah,
October, I think.
yeah. That's the
Yeah,
gorilla.
that would be really good. That would be a special little gig.
Yeah, I'm
That's
gonna be
quite a
there.
small, intimate
Oh
gig,
yes.
really,
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
the bootlegs. So yeah, that'll be amazing.
yeah,
Definitely get yourself a ticket for that one because
yeah. I love that
that'll be a
venue.
special gig.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
Gorilla, and I'm gonna keep an eye out for you twirling sticks when you're playing the when you're
yeah,
playing
yeah,
cowbell.
absolutely.
And the next one is drumming heroes. Do you have any drumming heroes?
Loads, far too many. Um, Keith Moon was probably my biggest influence when I was growing up. Um, him and John Bonham particularly.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
John. Yeah,
I
yeah,
I loved Ginger Baker's drumming. I thought he was phenomenal as well. So I was very rooted in that sort of 60s, 70s rock and roll stuff, but mainly the 60s side of things.
yeah,
Uh, then, sort of more recently, I guess, Zach Starkey, of course, because he comes from that same school. But I'm
yeah,
very rooted in that. I love Steve Gadd as a technician and as the king of groove.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
just he's great at sitting in the pocket and playing just phenomenal drums. Dave Weckl is amazing. Buddy Rich was phenomenal. I I can't just name one person. There's far too many there.
any Manchester drummer, a man drummer that you
Yeah.
who would be like Reddy or maybe Mike Joyce or
Oh, I mean, you've got to love Rennie. Oh man. Oh, this. Mike Joyce.
Mike
Um,
Joyce, yes.
yeah, I think he's probably up there really for Mancunian drummers. Um, I remember I used to go to Matt and Fred's, go to the jazz
Oh
nights
right,
there for
yeah,
years, um, and I used to go and watch Dave Walsh's acoustic quite a lot because Dave Walsh was an absolute monster drummer, phenomenal drummer.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I guess really he's got to be in there somewhere for Manchester drummers for me because
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I watched a lot of him playing drums when I was younger.
Is that
Yeah.
still going? Is that still going, Matthew?
Yeah,
Is
the jam nights at Matt and Fred's every
yeah.
Monday. Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
see. Okay, because that's on
Mm.
Oldham Street, isn't it? It's the same place as
Mm.
where Live.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I should give that a try. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Whenever I get the opportunity, I'll go down there. I
yeah.
rarely get up because I can play a bit of jazz, but I'm not really a jazzer. And some of those drummers are
I see.
absolutely unreal. And I do
So,
feel a bit like a fish out of water when I get up behind a kit. But
oh,
every
right.
now and again, if I can see that they're struggling for drummers and that the bar's not been set way too high, then occasionally I'll get up and just hold a groove.
So is it like an open mic for drummers or something like that? Is it so you
No,
can just
it's for
play?
all instrumentalists. So yeah, any drummer can get up and
Oh, good.
play, but they set the bar very, very high. Like the standard of musicianship on that stage on a Monday night is unfathomable sometimes. Particularly
Yeah.
when the Manchester Jazz Festival's on, you want to go down there and just sit and yeah,
And
sit
what?
in awe
And
and watch and just go, how is
yeah.
that possible? Yeah, yeah,
What about disasters, drumming disasters? Have you ever had any of those? Have you fallen off
yeah.
your drums?
Um, the well, it was possibly the the most, you know, um, Yeah, most important moment of my life was a drumming disaster. Weirdly, yeah.
Okay.
Um, so how I got the job with the bootlegs was through a drumming disaster where I was playing um, I was playing drums for the Rainband. Rainband
Yeah.
were doing quite well at this point, and um, and we were all from Urmston in Manchester, and um, in this is this is going to sound a bit long-winded, but essentially in 1963, the Beatles played a show called the Urmston Show in Urmston, and it was just at the time when Please Please Me had been released, and they were signed to play this little farm show in Urmston from about a year before, and they'd got this contract for it and everything, and um, Please Please Me hit, and it was massive, and then they were like, we want to get out of doing that gig, and the organisers of the festival said, no, you can't, you're signed to it, you've signed the contract, you should play it. So they
Yeah.
honoured the contract, and so just as Beatlemania was kicking off, the Beatles played this little show in Urmston
You
called
know?
the Urmston Show. Um, there's lots of different stories that all contradict each other. Some saying they played on the back of a lorry, some saying that they were taken to the stage on a milk float. But basically, it was a small family show, family farm show, and they played like you know it was the Beatles.
Yeah.
So 50 years later, the local community in Urmston decided to put on a festival to celebrate 50 years since the Beatles played
So,
on
yeah.
Chesham Park.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um, they uh, they wanted us on the bill because we were doing quite well at the time, and the headline act was the Bootleg Beatles. So we were the band on just before the Bootleg Beatles,
Oh,
and
really?
there was a bit of a mix-up for whatever reason. The Bootleg Beatles thought that they had an hour to set up between us finishing our gig and them going on stage, when in actual fact they only had half an hour. So the Bootleg Beatles tech at the time came up to me and said, um, can the Bootleg Beatles use your drum kit? And I said, well, it'd be a bit of a shame for them not to use the proper Ringo
Ringo.
Ludwig kit,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
if he wants to use mine, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. So he's like, right, okay, that means I've got enough time to be able to just lift on the amplifiers and, we can do a gig that way. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, whilst I'm playing, I've only ever done it once, and it was on that day, somehow kicked a hole in my bass drum skin. Don't know how that happened, but the bass drum skin split. So I called over to the guy who was playing, who was the tech for them, and I was like, come here, have you got any gaffer tape? So he gets some gaffer tape and he sticks the gaffer tape over the hole that I've just kicked in my bass drum skin. And I said to him, whilst I'm still playing for the Rainband, I said, go and set the Ringo drum kit up at the side of the stage. I'll lift mine off and lift that one on, and you just look after the amplifiers. And he was like, right, okay. So that's what happened. We finished our set. I lifted my drum kit off. I grabbed the Ringo drum kit and set that up for him, and they made it on stage on time within half an hour. And
Oh,
after their set, he came up to me and he said that was really amazing what you did. Can I have your number? So I gave him my number, and then 6 months later, he phoned me up and said, "I need a drum tech for the Bootleg Beatles tour that's coming up. Can you do it?" So
oh
there you
wow.
go, and the rest is history. I've worked for them for 11 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet Gordon that time though? Was that the first time that you met him, or have you?
No, it was a different drummer then. It was a guy called
Oh, okay.
Hugo.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
I think Gordon's been doing it for about 7 or 8 years now.
oh, okay.
But yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you were there. You were with them longer than the current
Yeah,
drummer.
so I've been with them for longer than Gordon. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Oh
think
wow!
really there's only Steve White who's the he's the guy who plays Paul. He's called
Oh,
Steve White,
okay.
but he's not that Steve
It's
White.
not the,
You know,
yeah. I was gonna
he's not
say
the Steve White.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Not
This
the
being a
drummer.
this being a drummer podcast,
Yeah, I know that was gonna say the drummer
that
Steve
joke normally
White.
gets lost on people.
Man, that's a
But
brilliant
yeah,
story.
yeah,
Yeah, I didn't
yeah. So
realize.
he's the only other person who's been there longer than me, I
Yeah,
think. No, yeah,
I should look that up. The Beatles playing in Urmston. That's
yeah, yeah. It's amazing, and yeah, I think now I might be wrong on this, but um, my old boss from the Bootlegs, he was a big Beatle historian. He's sadly no longer with us. A guy called Andre Barrow, and he played George in the Bootlegs, and he did a lot of research on that, and I think he was really quite proud when the Bootlegs got to play Urmston Festival. I think he said, I might be wrong on this, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was under the impression that because the photos from that day, they're all wearing um, the black turtleneck jumpers that they
oh
were
yeah,
really famous for, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I think that's the first time that those black
The
turtlenecks
turtleneck,
made an
yeah,
appearance in the UK because they got those out in Hamburg, and it was not
yeah,
long after Hamburg that they played this show in. There's some of the earliest photos for sure, but whether it's the very first appearance, I'm not sure. But I think
yeah.
he thought it was. Yeah, yeah. So
That's
there you go.
fantastic. That's amazing. And thank you for telling us that story. That's that's really good.
No problem.
Right. Last question now for you, because what would be your advice to aspiring drummers?
Play, play everywhere and everywhere, like just anywhere and everywhere. Um, and do what works for you. You know, because
Yeah.
um, I think it's really, really difficult to make a career in drumming. You know, it's certainly not a case of, oh well, if I just get really, really good, then that's it. Somebody will take me on. But like I say, you know, for me, my own experience is never turn a gig down if you're not busy. You know, if you've got the time
Yeah.
free to do it, then do it. You
Do
know,
it. Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
can afford to do it, then do it. You know, sometimes, you know, I've done gigs for free and they have turned into paying gigs eventually because it's given me an opportunity to play in front of somebody or to meet somebody.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I don't believe that anybody should really have to play for free. And I think that really you should be paid whenever you're playing. But every now and again, there are opportunities out there where you just don't know where it's leading. So,
Mm. Yeah.
as
Yeah.
long as people aren't taking the mick out of you and, that you're doing it for the right reasons, then just get on every stage you can possibly get on. Take every opportunity that presents itself to you. And
Yeah.
as long as you can afford to do it and, people aren't ripping you off, you know, go and do it and take it for what it is. And, I still play open mic nights every now and again to sit behind a drum kit because I love playing
You
drums.
just yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes if that's the opportunity that gets me behind a drum kit to jam with my friends, then that's what I'm doing it for, and I'm doing it for the fun of it. And then other times I do it because it'll give me it's a really good opportunity to go out and play with somebody. Or
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
times I'm doing it because well it pays well, and there's always a balance to be struck between those things. But as long as you get that balance right and you take as many of the opportunities that you feel as though you can take yourself, then you're going to be
Yeah.
putting yourself in front of as many people as possible and giving yourself as many opportunities as you can get. You know,
Yeah. That's
get out there
that's
and play.
brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant advice. Because, like you said, it's who you know. Because you'll never know who you'll
Mm,
meet. Even if
that's
it's a free
exactly
gig
it.
or something. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
exactly it. And it's also interconnected.
yeah,
And
yeah, that's,
if you're a nice guy and you get on with people and you meet people and you're
yeah.
playing great drums, even if you're doing it for free, you'll meet somebody eventually that will pick you up and go, you know
They'll
what,
remember
we'll get
you.
him on this gig. They'll remember you. If you
Yeah,
be
yeah.
be friendly, be kind, be courteous, and just play. They're all the things that will get you work. I
That's
guarantee it.
it. Yeah. Well, before I let you go, have you ever turned down a session drumming work? It's because I don't know,
Um,
maybe because you're not really keen on the band or not keen on the music or something. So have you ever turned
no,
down?
I see. I've always been of the opinion that you know sometimes you do stuff that's not really your vibe, but it's worth doing to
It's well, yeah, yeah,
um you know to expand yourself as a drummer. See, I've done gigs where I've played for orchestras, I've played for jazz bands, and I've done all sorts of stuff that's slightly out of my comfort zone that I wouldn't
yeah.
necessarily do otherwise. But then you find stuff in those projects where you go, well, actually, that was kind of a cool riff, or that was kind of an interesting thing that I was doing on that. Maybe I can incorporate that in my own drumming. So I always think, just take every opportunity. So I only turn down opportunities if I'm genuinely too busy to be able to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
because
thank
even if it's not really my vibe, I'll. I mean, if
you.
it's something that I feel as though is way out of my comfort zone and it demands somebody of better experience in that particular field. So, like for example, if somebody came to me and said, "Look, we want you to play drums on this R&B track," I'd think, well, is it if it's a studio session and I'm just playing on that one track and they've not got a particularly big budget or anything, then I'd go, well, okay, I'll do that, and I can fit in there, and I could probably do something that complements it well enough. But
Yeah.
I also know that I'm not a great R&B drummer. Like I wouldn't be able to do it as well as somebody else. So if I knew that they'd got a big budget and they were expecting somebody who was brilliant at R&B stuff, I'd say no, that's not my remit. I'll
Oh,
pass you
right.
on to somebody else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think
Oh,
sometimes you've got to know where your limits are. But if there's an opportunity to do something, especially if it's a non-paid gig, you just say, well, I might not be the best person, but if you're not paying, then you don't want to be expecting the best person. So I'll do it to try and grow from it. Every
oh,
now
well,
and again, you do stuff like that and try and
yeah.
learn from it, I think.
Oh, that's
Mm.
brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Steve. I really
It's all
enjoyed
right.
it.
Yeah, it's
I'm
been.
so glad. Yeah, that's why, even though the band are going to go and see is like not familiar, I'm not familiar with, I just
Mm.
love, I just love going to all these gigs and discovering new bands. And I'm glad that I was able to talk to you and ask you about Ask the Drummer.
Oh, it's
And
been really fun. I've really enjoyed it. It's been really
yeah,
nice.
thank you so much. And I really hope that I'll get to see you play again, maybe with the Rain Band or the Bootleg
Yeah,
Beatles.
absolutely. Well, if I don't see you before, I'll definitely see you at Gorilla.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, we will see with that. Thank you so much, and good luck with the when you go back to your tour in a few days' time. So have fun.
Okay, no problem.
All right, thank you so much, Steve. See you
Thank you
again.
very much. Okay,
Bye.
bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Like, that was absolutely amazing. It's like for me when I go to a gig and see the bands and everything, I always look out. I always check out the drummers and hopefully get to meet them after the gig and then ask them, tell them about Ask the Drummer and things. And most of the time I get very, very lucky. I always say that I am blessed because most of the time the drummers, they're very kind and they say yes to it. So I tell them, I give them some information and everything. It's like it's like what happened with Steve. And when he told me that he's actually been to Manila with the bootleg Beatles, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So thank you so much, Stephen Erlen, for joining us today. And thank you so much, everyone. This week is actually a special week because I'm going to Shine On in Skegness this weekend. So next Astro Drummer episode is going to be with someone who's playing at Shine On, and we'll be talking about our Shine On experience next week's show. So thank you all so much. Do keep an eye out for the guest announcement post for that, and hope to see you all next Tuesday. It's going to be because we're not coming back home until Monday afternoon from Shine On, so it's going to be a bit hectic. So Tuesday it will be. But yeah, I'll do the guest announcement post soon. As always, love music, love life, love drummers. Thank you so much, Stephen Erlam. Really enjoyed that. Every single minute of it is absolutely amazing. And thank you for that story about the Beatles playing in Ormston. Imagine that. But yeah, see you all again next week. So for now, bye for now for me. So see you. Bye.